Hey parents, Carmine here with your video review of Halo 5 Guardians.
Incoming!
Halo 5 has a big problem, and that is that it's a mediocre game. Overall, it feels just as smooth and competent as the previous Halo games, but now that it isn't shackled by the performance capabilities of the Xbox 360, I was excited to see what this game could do with its newfound technical freedom. Unfortunately, it didn't do anything significant. My expectations were probably too high, but ultimately I wanted this to be more than just another mediocre, middle-of-a-trilogy shooter. But fortunately for Halo 5, there is a way for mediocre games to be elevated, and that is through split screen. Playing a game with someone who is physically next to you makes every good moment just a little bit better, and turns every bad moment into a potential inside joke. Bad dialogue makes you laugh instead of cringe. Dull moments or unnecessary lulls between combat can be filled with conversations, and if a game is just too frustrating or boring to sit through, you feel justified knowing that you're not the only person to feel that way. Unfortunately for Halo 5, it's the first Halo shooter to not include split screen. I'm sure the developers had very good reasons to not include it, but to me it seems devastatingly short-sighted. Halo 4's campaign was strange, but was far more enjoyable than it should have been purely because of the split-screen co-op. Its absence from Halo 5 torpedoed any chance I had of really liking the campaign from the very beginning, and very little in the game did anything to elevate my experience. It's certainly not the worst game I have ever played, not by a long shot, but it would be a bold-faced lie to say that I enjoyed the experience. Now before I go on, there may be some minor spoilers here and there. I've tried to minimize it where possible, but if you're worried about that, skip to the end. Violence is by far the most prominent factor in this game, which won't surprise anyone familiar with the rest of the franchise. Halo's violent content has remained fairly consistent since the beginning, and Halo 5 is no exception. Hits from all weapons result in blood, but there is never any gore. There are a decent variety of weapons to use, and while some are a bit more devastating than others, the overall violent content hardly ever increases. This type of violence is typical for both the campaign and the multiplayer. The one exception to this type of violence is in the campaign. When an enemy is killed by certain high-powered energy weapons, the enemy completely dissolves into ash, but there is no additional blood or gore. The player can perform melee-based executions in this game. These executions change depending on the race of the enemy being killed, but I found them relatively infrequent in the campaign even when I was trying to be stealthy and use melee attacks. These executions sometimes involve a knife and sometimes resulted in blood, but this wasn't very consistent. Executions can happen in the multiplayer, although they are even more rare there than in the campaign. The only thing left to talk about is Cortana. While she does play a prominent role, most of this is via the radio. She is present in a few early cutscenes, but not prominently displayed like she was in previous games. There are some brief moments where she can be seen at a distance in her normal, mostly naked form, but the only time when she is shown at any sort of length comes towards the end of the game. In this particular cutscene, she's wearing a sort of body armor. Halo 5 won't be winning any Game of the Year awards from me, but fans of the series should still play it so they're ready for the finale in Halo 6. Overall, the lack of mature content outside of the violence led us to give this game a recommended age of 12 years old. I'm working on getting Fallout 4 review done, so hopefully you'll see that review and a few more coming soon.